listening to Music Student 101. Throughout history, mankind has utilized mind-altering substances to alleviate their woes and to spark creativity. It seems like creatives and artists are more inclined towards this risky behavior. Let's talk about some of these substances, their effects, and the risks involved. Now your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Okay, we're cutting in here because this is kind of a rare occasion.
It is.
We just recorded this episode.
On drug use among musicians.
Substance abuse in music, yeah. And afterwards, I don't know why, Matt, but I got a feeling as we were wrapping things up, and I said, how did you feel about that episode?
Yeah.
And you said, man, I don't know if I felt that good about it. What was on your mind?
I didn't want to take too lightly a subject that has been real problem for many, many people in the world.
Correct.
Is the big thing.
Right.
We don't want to be judgmental.
No.
And at the same time, we don't want to, promote drug use, but even more so, we don't want to just casually toss aside or kind of act like this is no big deal. Because it's a big deal.
It is. So some of our listeners have actually written in and shared some of their own stories with problems with substance abuse and some success stories as well. And some of you might be listening right now. And I want you to know that we take this very seriously.
Indeed.
And our listener feedback is very important to us.
It is.
If you listen to this episode and everybody else listening, give us some feedback, because if you don't feel good about this topic or this episode, or if you think we're going way off on a different rabbit hole here, as we have done before, give us some feedback. Let us know how you feel about it. That might determine whether or not we do a part 2 of this episode.
It will indeed.
This episode, the drugs we discuss, nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, LSD, are among some of the more common, in the artist scene.
Right.
And some of them, for example, marijuana, we have a few laughs during that, and then we have a few laughs during some other parts, but we don't want to dismiss how the gravity.
Exactly.
Particularly alcohol and how many lives it's ruined friends of ours. And we share some of our own stories about that as well. So we're trying to be candid. We're trying to be honest. We're trying to inform. This is a little bit of a public service announcement to some degree.
Indeed, yeah.
We are going to share some of our own stories. We're going to share some stories of some famous musicians.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about some casualties. We're going to be talking about some survivors. We just want to let you know that we're thinking about this, and we do take this seriously, and we take your feedback seriously, and your thoughts and feelings on this subject.
And if you're not into this, feel free to skip.
Yes, by all means. Having said that, let us resume with this episode. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Jeremy.
Couple of crazy things going on today.
Oh, yeah?
This is episode 87.
Woohoo!
That is 2 4s plus a 7.
Oh, wow.
And you know me in 47s.
Yeah.
My little OCD thing.
Got a thing, yep.
Another cool thing about today is it is February 2nd, 2020.
Yes.
Have you seen that this is the first time we've had a palindrome like that in 900 years?
No, really?
0202
right.
2020.
Nice. Beautiful.
We go in the same way we came out. Me and my palindromes. I think before we get too far into this episode, we need to have a little bit of a disclaimer. We're going to be discussing some subject matter that some people consider to be taboo.
Yeah, maybe not safe for kids.
Not safe for kids. Although I will say I was inspired a bit by a recent episode. We read a listener mail from our friend Gadiel.
Right.
Who was just a senior in high school.
Right.
And we were they were asking about how to, suggestions on getting into the music scene and all that stuff. And at one point we had a little PSA where we said, and don't do drugs.
Yeah,
I think we even made a little joke like, choose your drugs wisely.
Choose your drugs wisely.
And I didn't know if I wanted to leave it at that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, we joke a lot. And
We do.
all musicians kind of joke a lot about drug use.
Because it is, it seems to be just one of those things that's you may or may not have to reckon with.
Right. And yet, it's one of those things that despite the drug use can be a devastatingly serious issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is gonna be an interesting format here, Matt, for this show, because my daughter Chloe, when she got into her freshman year in high school, she went from a very small school, the Waldorf School here in Birmingham, where her graduating class was 3 kids, and she went to a public school, Shades Valley, where she has thousands of kids everywhere.
Right.
And like most of us, we trust and love our kids and think nothing could ever go wrong or bad could ever happen to them, or that they would ever make any bad decisions. But I still decided I was going to take her out to lunch and sit down with her and have an honest as possible conversation about drugs, everyone I know of, and I even included, I thought long and hard about this, but I even included some of my own experiences. So I could actually give her a firsthand account and why some of those things didn't work, why some of the pros, quotes unquote,
quote unquote pros,
and the cons of a lot of these drugs.
Right.
And later on in the episode, we're going to talk about what it does to younger minds, younger brains that are still in development.
Sure.
But I did want to be honest with her, and that's going to be kind of like what we're doing with you guys today. Having a bit of a conversation about the big elephant in the room.
Narcotics use and its prevalence in the musical community. Because it is prevalent.
It is.
Or at least it has been in the past.
Right. But anyways, we just wanted to give you guys a heads up. If you find this to be sensitive material, or if you don't, this is your chance to
skip to the next episode.
Yep.
Which will be coming out very soon.
Exactly. Get back into music history.
Right.
And this, to some degree, is going to be a little bit of music history, because I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about each substance, have Matt, our good doctor, give the...
Not that kind of doctor.
No. Closer than me, though. Actually, I did pretty good in biology back in college. I thought I was going to get into the medical thing for a little bit.
Really?
For a very small stint in my freshman year. But anyways, first of all, let's go ahead and get into some of these new reviews here, shall we?
Absolutely.
The first one is we have a 5-star review from My Wit Won't Fit. Very short and simple, no BS. I know nothing about music theory, ... except what I learned here.
Oh man, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
But thank you so much for the review. Glad you enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you. Our good reviews continue to fly in after that one episode.
The Jeremy is still hung up on, not that he'll admit it.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
And
it just has a way of coming up every time.
Yeah, every 30 minutes. Call Matt at 3 o'clock in the morning. Drive into a ball!
The thing about this review was... yeah. It's not quite that bad, but it does seem to come up a lot.
Yeah.
That'll bad review.
That'll fall off over time, I'm sure. Okay. Let's move on to our Patreon patrons, shall we?
Let's move on to our Patreon patrons. So Christian from San Francisco writes... well, first of all, he found us on the Google machine. Mm-hmm. And he writes... I'm originally from Copenhagen, Denmark, over in Europe. I have some friends in Copenhagen, believe it or not. But I live and work as a software engineer for a major company in the San Francisco Bay Area these days. I'm a man in my 30s, and I used to be a fairly decent classical pianist, but when I figured out that music wouldn't be my main pursuit in life, I took a long break from it, like 15 years or so. Mm-hmm. Back then, I was a complete classical snob, but now that I'm a little older and wiser, I have learned that all types of music have good things in them.
There you go.
I still love classical music, but I used to care only about being better at some flashy Rachmaninoff or Liszt piece than my peers. But now I realize that it doesn't have to be about that. This sounds like maturity to me. Young people kind of versus, moving into your 30s.
I went through that.
Yeah. Where was I?
His Chopin was my Les Claypool.
Right, exactly. He continues, now I care much more about how music works and why certain stuff sounds the way it does. What makes jazz sound like jazz, Motown like Motown, Why does Chopin sound so Chopinish? And so on. Why do they sound so different even though they pick from the same fairly limited palette of notes? Yeah, there's only 12. Getting back into music, I chose the piano because it's such a versatile instrument. I work on getting my mechanical skill back while trying to acquaint myself with an eclectic set of genres and understand more about theory. What a noble pursuit. Yeah, and I can relate to a little bit. I was a little bit of a classical snob back in the day myself. But yeah, you kind of grow out of that. And you kind of start seeing classical music as another type of music. And just like all the others he mentioned, Motown and jazz and everything else, there are certain characteristics of classical music that makes it identifiable as classical music, certain musical characteristics. Just like there are certain musical characteristics of jazz or Motown or blues or country or anything else, and it is amazing how much diversity comes from just really 12 notes.
Indeed. But yeah, like you're saying, musical maturity. And I think I was like, just trying to be the best. I wanted to be the best bass player in Birmingham when I was in college. You know what I mean? Like, no one's going to be better than me.
Right. Till you met some of those bass players. It's like, wow.
Got around the music scene. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try and be a solid bass player.
Yeah, just go to, yeah.
Maybe I'll surprise myself every now and again. That'll be good enough.
Right.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Christian.
Thanks again, Christian. Great mail, and thank you for your support.
And welcome to the Patreon family.
And welcome.
Okay. For our listener mail, this is what I'm going to call kind of a retro acknowledgement.
Retro acknowledgement.
Remember, our last episode was on syncopation.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, I know that didn't just come out of, even though it should have. I know it didn't just come out of my mind. It was one day it just hit me, we need to do an episode of syncopations. No, we had a listener named Isaac Samuels, and they actually wrote in with a couple of questions about syncopations. This goes back to our episode on transcribing a song.
Right, Dewey and Dora.
Dewey and Dora with our good friend Keith Andrews.
Yep.
Hey, Keith, what's up, buddy? So here we go. And Isaac had a good point here. He said, last week in oral skills, this is actually a class he's taking, we talked about how sometimes for the sake of simplicity, a transcription of a folk song might not have all the syncopation marked.
Indeed.
And if a person was hopefully heard the song enough to know where it goes. So.
Or at least have enough of a sense of how that kind of folk music works. Yeah,
you can use that to inform how you perform it.
Right, yeah.
It seems to me that all of the whole notes in Dewey and Dora really start on the upbeat. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and Dewey and Dora met in Spain.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? But actually, in my notation of it, even though I held off on that first note, for that first half note count for Dewey, that, I guess, eighth note delay.
Yeah.
I went ahead and put Spain, the whole note, right down on the downbeat of the next measure. Yeah. Where he is suggesting that if I was to be more true to Keith, even though Keith wasn't even right there on the and, it was more like the and of the and, like the 16th note.
Yeah, the 16th tied into the, yeah.
So it may have been that I was aware of that and did what he was talking about with his class, that just to simplify it for our listeners and for our readers.
Sure, yeah.
I'm thinking that's probably why I did that.
Yeah.
That's my story, and I'm sticking by it.
Well, that reminds me of back in the old days playing with MIDI, when transcribing notes software was kind of in its infancy, and you could record and play, and they would give you a little sheet music representation of your MIDI file. And these things always look terrible, right? They would have 64th notes tied into dotted 16ths and stuff like that, because it was not counting for just the natural human variance. And then they came up with quantizing,
yes,
right, to sort of snap all that into
grid
logic, into a grid, and you could set the parameters with the grid and everything. But he is right that these things are often simplified as compared to an actual performance, which is what, of course, the recording of Dewey and Dora is. Even in classical music, Exacting rhythmic accuracy is sometimes an interpretable thing, often an interpretable thing, actually, and we do, especially folk music, pop music. We do tend to make the simplest thing that will get the idea across.
Kind of like a roadmap.
And again, even in classical music, in which the accuracy of the notation is a much bigger concern, of course. When it comes to performance, especially like I think of solo piano music and things like that, where an actual absolute accurately performed version of what's on the page never happens. One, because it's often it's just humanly impossible, and two, because no one would like it. If you did do it, this is why we didn't like MIDI files back in the day. One of the reasons is that they didn't sound like real music.
Sterile.
Right. So yeah. It's an interesting thing to point out, and he's probably right. It he kind of sings into the beat a lot. That was something I noticed too, and something we sort of chose to simplify for the sake of doing a lead sheet. And just like in those folk music, that you would, if you were to use that lead sheet to recreate the song, you would hopefully have someone whose musical artistry is enough to not sing it exactly, but to put some sort of spin, as the original performer did, and a certain amount of interpretation. Interpretation is actually what separates the real musicians from the mere students in many circles.
Right. Part of the blues style of singing is to sing just a little bit flat sometimes, of somewhere in between actually. Those two the half step.
If you ever get a chance to see a string quartet rehearse in your life, it is just a fascinating thing. Because even though they are definitely endeavoring to play very rhythmically accurately and generally do, the little decisions they make, because that's four people, you have to be on the same page interpretation wise. The little decisions they make, about well, should this be bouncy or should this be smooth, or when it says
swing.
It says swing, or when it says to slow down, well, how much of a slowdown is a slowdown? How much should we slow down? These are artful decisions.
Yeah.
And the sheet music won't necessarily tell you that. The sheet music never tells you everything.
Right.
Never does.
Way a good bit more than tab, but surely not everything still.
Certainly not everything still. Even when you get up into, Christian from San Francisco referenced Chopin and Rachmaninoff, even at that level, the notes in front of you aren't telling you everything about how to make this sound great, So, there you go. As an interesting thing to bring up, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Isaac. And this, Matt, is the testimony to the level of cool that our listeners are achieving here, because they're keeping us in check, and I do appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
And, this has happened before. We had an astrophysicist tell me that I kind of...
That you got your astrophysics wrong?
And I fixed it. I went back and fixed it and reposted the episode and went back to the website and made all the changes. And I did that recently. A friend of ours, Kate Hall from New Zealand, caught episode 9. Episode 9, Matt. How long ago was that? 2 years?
Oh, a long time.
A simple notation misprint of mine that has survived those 2 years. And Kate Hall from New Zealand was the first one to say, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah. So keep us on our toes. So
I went back and fixed that. That was just a simple oversight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But anyways, it does take a village. And we have a intellectual rep to protect.
We do.
And we want to maintain validity.
We do.
So
I notice here Isaac does get around to asking us, did you guys mark it that way on purpose?
Yeah, right. I did mark it that way on purpose.
Yeah, on purpose, is a heavy term.
Yeah.
We didn't miss the fact that the rhythm of those vocals was fluid, right? What we were trying to do is translate that fluidity into the rigidity of notation.
And the roadmap kind of style.
Yeah, right, yeah. Because, if you think, well, okay, he's coming in on the 16th note, a 16th note ahead of every measure, well, then that means, he's probably coming in 16th notes in other places too, and some things are slowing down and some things are not, and you can go down a real rabbit hole, and create notation that is just more complicated than it needs to be, right? To get the idea across.
But I think that, and we probably will do another transcribing a song episode.
Yeah, maybe well, it was a lot of fun.
And if we do that, maybe we will try and be a little closer to the actual, maybe I will try and be a little more accurate to the...
It depends on the song, you know. Having done that kind of transcription work for actual money before, I can tell you, that is a decision you make, what constitutes, what I think of as an intentional decision. Like, no, I'm entering on the 4 here, or entering on the and a 4 here, versus what is being musical in my interpretation, And okay, so maybe I kind of slid into the downbeat a little bit, those are the kind of decisions you have to make. You go too far one way, and your lead sheet is not going to represent the song you were trying to make it represent, right?
Right.
You go too far the other way, and it's going to be
cumbersome,
so complicated that people are having to sight read, this vocal line to an extent that you're going to ironically kind of rip the musicality from it, So, so you sort of split the difference and then say swing.
Yeah, right.
Or
swing.
rubato if you're classical, right? Or something along those lines.
Sure. Well, very good. I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks again, Isaac, for checking in on that. And thank you for all of our reviews and the listener mails. And, of course, our Patreon patrons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helping us out and staying engaged. Being a part of our little community here at Music Student 101.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, man. I reckon it's time to get into the episode, Matt.
I reckon it is.
I am going to start off with a question that I have for you.
Okay.
And I've asked this question to a couple of my buddies recently.
Okay.
Musician buddies.
Yeah.
Why do you think artists, poets, musicians, creatives in general, tend to be experimental to mind-altering substance or with mind-altering substances?
Why do I think that? There's a couple of possible explanations, I suppose, that come to mind. One is that creative people are always in search of new creativity. And so they're attracted to the idea of seeing new things or experiencing new experiences. Because that kind of is just sort of part and parcel with wanting to write a song that does not yet exist.
Yeah, right.
Or whatever, or having your own style. Whether they think that those substances are going to show them something, or whether they think those substances are going to enhance their creativity or not. I think it's a personality type. One could argue. I'm generalizing, but one could argue is a personality type that wants to experience new things.
One of my friends mentioned he thought it was a left brain, right brain kind of thing. And it might be that the right brain people who are more into the arts tend to also have this trait.
Yeah, because they tend to have this trait of wanting to learn something new, wanting to have new experiences, for the sake of having new experiences, whereas more rational people, rational is the psychological term, right? Whereas more rational left brain people tend to want to learn and experience things that are of immediate use,
tangible.
Yeah, right. Artists tend to want to learn things just for the sake of learning them.
Yeah.
Another thing I think of is the widely discussed emotional pain that seems to go with creativity and creative processes. That these are often not happy people.
The birth of the blues. We talked about that, man.
Right, yeah. You know, that in many ways, great art seems to come from great pain. There's a lot of examples of that.
And in many of these cases, the substance abuse was the result of another problem and took on the role of a medication.
Right, yeah. They're done in a sense, either consciously or not, to alleviate some of the pain that is just, you know, seems to also drive people to be creative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is all great generalizations. I mean, everybody has pain. Everybody has emotional pain. You know?
It's true. It's true.
Everybody likes new experiences. Nobody wants to see the same movie 500 times unless it's really, really, really good.
Unless it's The Big Lebowski.
Or Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
Or, you know. So, but yeah, those were the two things I would say off the top of my head. Those were the two possibilities I would ponder.
I'm going to piggyback on that because I think it's also the creative personality compared to the left brain people, I suppose.
Yeah.
Everyone's a little creative in their own ways, right?
Absolutely.
This is not all
These
right.
are all huge generalizations.
All right brain people are creative. All left brain people are getting into math and all that.
Sure.
Jazz. No. But the people that do tend more towards that creative, and they also, by putting out, you don't know they're an artist until they put out their art.
Right.
And to put out your art is a very risky thing for some people's egos.
Well, it's for everybody, it's terrifying.
So there's a risk-taking kind of thing. There's a willingness to take risks. Mm-hmm. And in the case of substance abuse, sometimes they're willing to take risks to put them in different states of mind where they think it might actually be useful.
Yeah.
This comes down to a little bit of, what did I call it? Medication versus creation versus general rebellion, you know, I mean, you know. Yeah, versus just take...
I don't like following rules, and, you know, somebody says, don't do this, well, I don't care what you say, you know.
My friend Eitan, a guitar player, and a fellow listener,
Yay!
Hey, Eitan, what's up, buddy? He told me I could say this, because I saw him last night, and I asked him the same question.
Uh-huh.
And like myself, he's not a heavy drinker, but does enjoy a good craft beer or a high-gravity beer on occasion. But it sounds like he was saying, you know, even in the comfort of his own home, just a beer alone will help lower his self-judgment and his inhibitions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The kind of thing that might tell you, don't try that, don't do that, just stick with the plan, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of loosens him up and makes him feel like he's just kind of almost playing a little bit more out of his heart and soul.
Uh-huh, yeah.
He said it's a more direct output, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Between him and the instrument.
Yeah.
And of course, if you have too many more of those high gravity beers,
so you're just going to pass out and write nothing, right?
It can have quite the opposite effect.
And
he shared one of his...
Moderation is going to be a key underpinning theme to this episode, I feel like.
Exactly. And he shared one of his stories with me, and it was not unlike a few stories I'd had back in my crazy days in my college. Sure. Most of my experiences I'm going to be sharing with you are through my college years, which... you know, is probably the worst time to do that because as we're learning, the brain is still in development until you're about mid-20s, you know?
Right, uh-huh.
But anyways, all that to say, a lot of people that I've talked to, a lot of artists seem to have similar opinions about why creatives tend to get into that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, before we go ahead and light into this, I'd like to go ahead and read some sources.
Okay.
And we'll put all these links on the website, which we do have.
Yay, website. Yeah, check out the website, musicstudent101.com.
Every episode has notes and links and all that stuff.
We're told we don't mention the website enough.
So yeah, and it's true.
Well, we used to mention it all the time back in like episode 3. We kind of
And
forgot.
Actually, the website is a discussion for another day because I do want to get some feedback on some things about the website. So anyway, some of these sources, drugabuse.com, biography.com, GQ.com, there was an article called Creating While Clean by Chris Heath. Vice.com, there was an article called Is It a Myth That LSD Can Permanently Fry Your Brain by Mike Pearl. And then encyclopediabritannica.com for some of these definitions. And then justbelieverecoverypa.com. Okay?
Okay.
So in this episode, we're going to cover, I think, what is probably the more common drugs and substance among musicians and creatives.
Yeah, or try to.
Or try to, anyways. And this will be a 2-part episode, I'm learning, as I look at my notes. So we're going to talk about nicotine. Some of these things are considered gateway drugs.
Right.
You know, I put up my little quotations here.
Yeah, that's a loaded term.
Mm-hmm. Nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, and then the psychedelics in general, which will include LSD, mushrooms,
Sure, yeah.
acid, all that stuff. And we're going to talk about some of the stories of people where that didn't quite work out, and then some success stories. We're going to have some casualties. We're going to have some survivors in each case.
Yeah.
Peppered with some of our own personal experiences. I'm not speaking for you, Matt. I'll let you.
I don't have anything that makes good stories.
No, I bet. Okay, so let's just get into it, man, shall we?
Yes.
Now let's start off with the most common, I think, nicotine, otherwise known as stogies, pipes, dipping, most of all cigarettes.
Particularly cigarettes, though.
Particularly
is probably
cigarettes.
The big thing, yeah.
And of course, now that it has morphed into vaping nicotine products.
Oh, man, those things,
We don't spend a lot of time talking about that, but it is a thing.
It is definitely a thing.
So tell us a little bit about nicotine, Matt.
Well, it is an organic compound that is the principal alkaloid of tobacco, an alkaloid being one of the groups of nitrogenous organic compounds that have marked physiological effects on humans. Mm-hmm. So nicotine occurs throughout the tobacco plant, but especially in the leaves. Mm-hmm. Constitutes about 5% of the plant overall by weight. That's actually a lot.
You think so?
I mean, for just a chemical in it, I mean, is there any chemical that constitutes, 5% of your body weight?
Gosh, maybe not.
Water.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
60%, isn't it? Yeah. Something crazy like that.
Yeah, something like that. So that sounds like a lot to me. I don't know.
Well, there's good, clean water, and then there's being a plant and being a person. That's a direct conversation.
Anyway, both the tobacco plant, and we've got Latin here, Nicotine tabacum.
That's why I gave you this part, Matt.
Yeah, yeah,
good
thanks.
doctor.
Yeah, and the compound are named for Jean Nicot, a French ambassador to Portugal, who sent tobacco seeds to Paris in 1550. So this was a New World thing, right? They discovered this in the New World and sent it back to Europe. And they're like, hey, look at this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
The health risks to nicotine are not news to anyone, right? Increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate, flow of blood to the heart, and a narrowing of the arteries. Can also contribute to the hardening of the arterial walls, which can lead to a heart attack, to say nothing of mouth cancer, throat cancer, lung cancer, bronchial cancer, and just about everything else. Your average cigarette today is a carcinogen, and a evil one.
Yeah. It's just mutagen.
Yeah.
Mutagens cause cancer.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. And really, it is still, I think, well, maybe not so much today as it was even 20 years ago, one of the more widespread substance.
It seems like it's not nearly as widespread today.
Well, you're on a college campus all the time.
Yes. They're non-smoking.
Yeah.
Most college campuses today are tobacco-free campus-wide. You just don't smoke on a college campus.
Right.
Contrast that to the mid-class cigarette break that we had. Remember, it was like, halfway through class, it's like, all right, 10-minute break, and everybody would,
Exactly long enough for a cigarette and a game of hacky sack.
Exactly, yeah. Things have certainly come a long way in that regard.
In my thoughts, since pictures of musicians existed, there's always been pictures of musicians with cigarettes in their mouths. Yeah.
We were taught that was cool.
Even after the news about nicotine and its health risks.
We still thought it was cool. We were taught that looked cool, right?
So back when I was in high school, probably my junior year, I did start smoking cigarettes. I worked as a cashier at a local grocery store. And I think probably the most disappointed I think my dad had been in me was when I was in the break room having a smoke, and he pops in with the Chevron card, the gas card, to give me a new card to help pay for my gasoline. And there I am having a cigarette, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you're one smart son of a bleep, aren't you?" And I was like, "No." And that was the last he said about that.
Wow.
But I did throughout halfway through college, I smoked cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And I guess what they did for me was it's a stimulant.
Right.
So it kind of gives you a little bit of energy, kind of jazzes you up a little bit.
Right.
Like you said, it increases your heart rate.
Right.
But strangely, it makes you feel calm and relaxed.
At the same time. How does that happen?
I do not know exactly, but it did. And then the more and more I did it, there came times where I would start to have an urge for one. You might start to feel a little sweaty, a little anxious, you know?
Right, yeah.
But then I was fortunate enough to be playing with this band Tonal Vision in college, and at the same time, it seems like they all kind of quit smoking cigarettes. So peer pressure getting me into cigarettes also kind of got me out of cigarettes weak. But that's how I ended up being like, okay, well, I don't want to be the only jerk smoking in the room full of people coughing at me and waving their hands.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped out. Now, since then, I've had a smoke or two, like, especially in the right circumstances. After a drink or two.
The only smoke when you drink phenomenon?
With my smoking buddies.
Yeah.
But it's not a part of my regular thing. I don't really crave it. You know what I mean?
No.
I was never a pack a day kind of guy. Okay, so anyways. I don't know. I just think it certainly is a thing worth mentioning. And I do want to mention a couple of casualties. And when I say casualties of cigarettes, I mean, there's so many ways to die from cigarettes. Heart attack. But these are mainly lung cancer cases directly related to cigarette smoking.
Sure.
Roger Miller. Do you remember the Robin Hood cartoon? We talked about this. He was the little rooster.
Right.
The minstrel, the traveling minstrel rooster. And also great country musician.
Right, yeah.
Kind of goofy style. A lot of scatting. My wife loves him because she loves all things goofy.
Right.
Hence, she married me. But anyways, so there's Roger Miller. Jimmy Dorsey, composer, musician, and band leader. I guess from the swing period, swing orchestra.
Right, yeah.
Jazz orchestra. Dean Martin of the Rat Pack.
Right. Lost to lung cancer?
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, of course, anytime you've seen Dean Martin back in the footage of the day, he had
he always had. That was
martini and a cigarette. Some kind of drink.
Blue Eyes too.
Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra. That was his look, right?
Yep. Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, the Rat Pack. They all smoked heavily and sang with that smoky, jazzy voices, you know.
Yep.
Gosh, who else? Let's see here. Rosemary Clooney. Nat King Cole. Jazz legend Duke Ellington. Donna Summers. George Harrison of the Beatles, lung cancer.
Wow.
I don't think I was aware of that. I knew he died way too early.
Yeah.
I think it was 58, maybe?
Something like that. Yeah.
And as far as survivors are concerned, really anyone who's quit cigarettes and doesn't have lung cancer. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, nicotine. It's not quite as cool as it is.
As you would think.
Yeah. So anyways, let us move on. To the next thing I ended up messing around with, and even early as high school, later high school, alcohol, the demon drink.
This is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah, Mountain Dew, not the one we buy in the grocery stores.
Right.
I got a story about that. Tell us about it, Matt.
Okay, so this is a situation all in and of itself, right? Alcohol in the music community, and alcohol abuse in the music industry. Any compound characterized by one or more hydroxyl groups attached to a carbon atom of an alkyl group. Alcohols may be considered as organic derivatives of water in which one of the hydrogen atoms has been replaced by an alkyl groups. So although ethanol being the one that is in drinks.
Yes, the one that we actually drink.
Right. Ethanol is less toxic than methanol. It is nonetheless a poisonous substance. You are drinking poison. And many people die each year from that poisoning. When someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, from mild ethanol poisoning, that's what drunk is. Mm-hmm. You know, that is a kind of mild response. It's a mild poisoning. because animals often consume food that has fermented and contains ethanol, we have developed methods to detoxify ethanol before it can accumulate and poison the brain, as long as we don't drink more than those methods can handle. Right. So like your liver can detoxify and get that alcohol. It can deal with it, up to a point.
Right.
The problem is far too many people in the world and far too many musicians have gone way beyond that point.
Yes. I don't know why, but it happens.
Yeah.
No one really likes to wake up and feel that way in the morning. You know what I mean?
No,
Very few people plan on it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just happens.
Right, yeah.
Again, we talked about the blues episode where actually the name blues, some say, came from the Blue Devils.
Right.
Which was delirium tremens.
Yeah.
Which is the withdrawal effect from alcohol.
Ugh.
Which has been known to kill people.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay, so dig this. When I was in college, again, another college story, I joined a band called Shillelagh Law.
Mm-hmm.
This is an Irish band. And we played every Sunday and Wednesday at a place called Bailey's Irish Pub. And we sang songs about drinking and rebel songs and all that stuff. And people caught on, oh, these guys like to sing about drinking. Let's bring them shots, And so there was a night or two where there was a scene or two missing. Where I would be home and be like, hey, my car's not here. That's probably good if it's not impounded. How did I get home?
Right.
What's going on? I feel like death. And then later on, even, a little bit after college, I joined a band called Jasper Cole.
Mm-hmm.
Another Irish band.
Right.
Drinking line. Now, going back to the Shillelagh Law days, we all kind of managed to get that under control. All of us kind of had problems with that at some point. And
right,
we got to the point where we realized that we can't be doing that on stage and put on a good show. The show became more important.
Right,
and we all kind of, except for one member who continued to, drink too much. And unfortunately, we had to fire that member eventually. But then later on, Jasper Cole, I joined this other, even more rowdy Irish band. And the ballroom player, which is like that hand drum, whose name I won't mention, made his own moonshine. And that was the stuff that could take paint off of just about anything.
Mm.
And there might have been a scene or two missing
then too
early on with those guys, but it was the same kind of thing. We were all like, oh, Jesus, we can't do this, on stage. We cannot sustain living and do this. And there even became a point, like, way back where it would get later on the day, and I would start to feel kind of like the same withdrawal, like the cigarette thing, where you have this anxious feeling, and you get maybe cold sweats.
Right, yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I'm really craving a drink right now. I need to slow this down.
Yeah.
So I would go on a little fast, and I would try and do healthy things for my body.
Right.
But all my life as a musician and performing live has been a little bit of a, up until, I guess the first half of it, really.
Right.
Has always been me being like, okay, dude, keep it under control, keep yourself in check. And I found that if I count drinks, then I'm usually okay.
Yeah.
I
remember once getting really scared that I was drinking too much. It was back during my playing in bands and things days, and I had just coming off of a 6-month period where there had been a lot of gigs. I was just thinking, man, I'm drinking like a fish here. I didn't really feel any like cravings to have a drink or anything. It just felt like I was just drinking a lot. And I kind of was starting to scare myself. So I did this thing where I said, I'm not going to touch alcohol at all for like something crazy, like a month or 6 weeks or something like that. And this was a time, I was proposing this at a time period where we still had several gigs. I think I might have been in a couple of bands, and there was still a lot of gigs coming up.
Yeah.
And, that atmosphere, just... where alcohol is just flowing so freely at a concert like that, it was really tough. I remember playing at what was at the time a very well-known local bar here in town called Marty's, and the bartender who we knew really, really well. You know, I mean, part of what we were getting paid was like we were getting like the door and 2 beers apiece or something. You know,
Free drinks.
yeah. But I remember asking.
Marty's was smart enough to only make it 2 beers.
Yeah. But I remember asking the bartender to make me a pot of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So can you put on a pot of coffee and you know. He knew us well, and it's like, yeah, I can do that. Now, so I was drinking coffee all night.
Yeah.
Which I didn't go to sleep that night because of the caffeine, which we should probably talk about in terms of the one substance to which I'm truly addicted.
Indeed.
Yeah, that was. But I did it. I went 6 weeks without drinking a drop, and then you know. Kind of proved to myself that I could do it. And it's funny that I've done that a couple of other times in my life too. Just decided let's just see if I can go without a drink for X amount of time. And have been largely successful. So
I think it's not a bad idea to test yourself every now and again and be like, okay, how do I feel about this? You know, how am I responding? Am I doing it too much? Can I do without it?
Right.
And if you start to find yourself not being able to do without it, then you need to really consider alternatives, you know?
Yeah. And consider maybe getting help.
God, what else was I going to say about that? You know, I mean, for me, it actually started off, I think we talked about in our episode on stage fright.
Yeah.
How it took a certain amount of booze to actually make me comfortable on stage and not feel all reserved and feel just a little more loose, you know?
Yeah.
Again, if you have too many, there's quite the opposite effect.
Yeah.
In fact, I still have reoccurring dreams that I'm too drunk to plug in my bass. I'm like, where's the... And sometimes the head won't even have the quarter-inch jack in it.
Yeah.
That's not the alcohol. That's just my crazy dreams.
Crazy stress dreams.
But I don't know. It took a little while for me to kind of narrow that down, the amount of alcohol it took for me to be comfortable on stage.
Right, yeah.
But it was an important process.
You know, if you're going to play in a band, you know, you're going to have to kind of deal with these things a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and it's probably better to be aware that you're going to have to deal with them and make those kind of decisions before they're kind of thrust upon you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how much alcohol do I drink while I'm playing? Mm-hmm. You know, maybe the answer is none.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I developed the rule at some point that you know I would have to be finished playing and have all the equipment loaded up before I had a beer. You know, I would not drink while playing. Yeah. Just because, you know, that was that slippery slope where, you know, yeah, I think, you know, you're going to have to deal with these kind of issues. You know, decide what your policy is before it gets decided for you by the environment.
Right. You would reward yourself for a job well done.
Kinda, yeah.
As opposed to requiring booze to do a job.
Job, yeah. Well, I knew I didn't need booze to play. I mean, I never drank in practice or anything, so.
No. I wasn't drinking when I was 10 years old.
Right.
Piano. Okay. Well, let's talk about just one or two casualties here.
Okay.
Some of the more notable, John Bonham of Led Zeppelin, the drum player.
Right. Classic tragedy. Yeah.
Died at 32.
Mm-hmm.
In many of these cases, these people are choking on their own vomits. They throw up in their sleep.
Which is a thing, yeah.
And they choke on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a horrible way to go.
Yeah.
Bon Scott from AC/DC was only 1 year older at 33.
Yeah.
And died of the exact same way.
Yeah.
Amy Winehouse, a member of Club 27.
Famously.
Are you familiar with Club 27?
Yes.
All the musicians who died at 27, way too young.
Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin.
Mm-hmm. Of course, those were different. Those were heroin and Cobain, obviously.
Right.
Suicide.
Right. We can different deaths.
We'll be talking about that we'll talk about heroin in the next episode, though. That's the big no-no.
Yeah.
But Jimi Hendrix, 27, died. The night he passed away, he washed down a handful of sleeping pills with some red wine. Some people mix stimulants and depressants. In this case, he was mixing two depressants.
Right, yeah.
Together. And died like Bonham and Bon Scott, you know?
Wow.
So, it's just and there's not just that. It's not just, you know, overdosing on alcohol like some of these college kids on their hazing, getting stuffed in the trunk and told to drink 18 beers.
Right.
And it's no wonder they die.
Yeah.
but it's long-term effects also, cirrhosis of the liver,
Sure. Yeah.
kidney failure, just about anything.
To say nothing of the fact that alcohol addiction is a very serious problem for many, many people. You know, it ruins lives.
Oh, musicians aside. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Musicians aside, it ruins lives.
it really does. I've known so many stories that just, things just, fell apart,
Yeah.
you know? Some of my dearest friends, honestly.
Yeah.
Many of them musicians.
Yeah. And it seems so innocent.
Yeah.
You know, it's something I've wrestled with a lot in my life because in my life I've been around people and we drink. You know, we'll go out and have a beer. You know, or you know, or we'll have a whiskey shot or something. You know, and I won't think anything of it.
Yep.
You know, but then there's always that. It always seems like then there's the person who just really goes overboard or something. And you find yourself saying, how do I tell this person to stop doing something that I'm doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it makes you think, well, ought I to even be doing that?
Well, yeah, then you get the whole hypocrite thing.
Yeah.
But if they're making someone's life difficult, that's more of a problem.
Well, yeah. Well, they say is your life negatively impacted? Is the crucial question, right? Is your life with your family and loved ones and career and everything else
right
suffering because of how much you drink or how much you do anything? That's the definition of an addiction. And I guess I've always been lucky enough to say, well, no, you know, my life doesn't suffer because of my drinking.
No.
You know, I don't drink on that level. But still, you know, I mean, I still imbibe the same poison that's poisoning them, right?
It's all about moderation, man. You know what I mean?
Again, a key theme in this.
Well, I've seen articles where doctors recommend a glass of wine a day or something.
Right,
for
heart
your,
healthy.
circulation.
Clean out the arteries of cholesterol and things like that. Yeah, I've heard that too.
So you might say, well, then 3 glasses of wine a day would just really do the job.
I'll be clean as a whistle. Yeah, let's go. You know, it's not like, you know, it's not like getting rid of a clog in your bathtub or something. You know, it's not like, well, just pour the whole bottle of Drano in, forget, you know.
Yeah, right.
And it'll get really clean. Yeah, it's I even asked the doctor once, well, what if I drink like a bottle on the weekend? He said, no, that's not.
Oh, right. That's like the equivalent of
it's not cumulative. It's like, oh, what if I wait till the weekend and drink the whole bottle? No, don't do that.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, let's talk about some success stories, some survivors here.
Okay.
Among the country legends, Keith Urban.
Is alcohol free?
Alcohol free. John Isbell, who I might not have guessed, actually.
Yeah.
He always looks so, you know, so spry.
Yeah.
But Isbell said that at one point he was by the time he realized he was really in trouble, he was drinking about a 5th of whiskey a day.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't. I drink a 5th of whiskey a year, man. Seriously. I get a 5th of whiskey as a Christmas present every year from one of my family members, and it's usually just about gone. There's like one good shot left when Christmas rolls around again, and I get another. So,
well, you have a plan. You're going to make it last all year, so you're going to, throughout the year,
right.
portion it out.
Right.
That's a smart strategy.
It wasn't a strategy. It's just what happened. That's what kind of a lightweight I am when it comes to whiskey.
Well, you're on the right track there, Matt. Oh, who else? And then, of course, we talked about Ozzy Osbourne a little bit in the episode for Stage Fright.
Who's done everything.
Everything, even small birds.
He's done drugs you've never heard of.
Right. But he had a really bad case of stage fright, and so he used alcohol at first, and then many other things to get over that.
Yeah.
He is now sober. And I remember there was an episode, he had a reality show, I guess the Osbournes.
The Osbournes, yeah. It was a famous one back in the day.
And his son was just a little bit out of high school.
Yeah.
And his son was drinking, and Ozzy was trying to warn him about being careful about drinking.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I'm not addicted to it. It's not like I need it. And Ozzy's like, that's how everybody starts off. That's how I start off. You don't just have one drink and boom, you're addicted to it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's a gradual process of drinking more and more each time, and finally just going off the deep end and not knowing your limits, you know?
Yeah.
Words of the wise.
And you can't say he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Cannot say that.
Yeah.
And most people I know have been the exact example of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good job, Ozzy.
Good job.
And anyone out there
Yeah.
who has either through rehab or just your own, methods.
Yeah. Congratulations on surviving.
Yes, because that is one of the more deadly.
Yeah.
Not car crashes aside. We wouldn't get into car crashes.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, how is it deadly? Count the ways.
Count the ways.
Yeah. Drunk driving, cirrhosis. Alcohol influenced suicide. I mean, just yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Let's do.
Marijuana, Mary Jane.
Oh wow.
The devil's lettuce.
This particular narcotic is extremely fascinating because over the course of our lives, we have seen social attitudes about this one change dramatically.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Dramatically.
Yeah. When I was a college student, this was an illegal narcotic. This was a banned substance. This was something that got you thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm. In every state.
In every state.
Right.
Yeah. Now, it seems like people's attitudes have softened a lot. Barack Obama admitted to having smoked pot in college, smoked marijuana in college.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton
didn't inhale though.
Didn't inhale.
He did do a few other things.
Yeah.
We're not going to do
So yeah, I mean, just look at the presidents. We've gone to never smoked pot ever to didn't inhale to I smoked pot in college. Right.
Uh-huh. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Tell us a little bit about the actual drug, Matt.
Oh yeah, I have. So marijuana varies in potency depending on variety and how and where it is grown, prepared, stored, used. The active ingredient is tetrahydrocannabinol, very commonly referred to as THC. We've heard about this, right? It's present in all parts of the plant, both the male and female versions of the plant, but is most concentrated in the resin in the flowering top of the female. Hashish, which is actually more popular in Europe than it is in the United States, is a more powerful form of the drug made by collecting and drying this resin that's got the most THC in it, and it's about 8 times as strong as the marijuana that is typically smoked in the United States. It is mainly either smoked and gets into your bloodstream that way, or eaten in edibles and gets into your bloodstream that way.
Mm-hmm. The main sources of intake.
Those are the two big things. Yeah.
Let's see here. I guess.
What are some good marijuana stories, Jeremy?
Marijuana stories. Okay. I'll go ahead and tell you the first time I tried marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I was, it was in between my junior and senior year in high school.
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends that were smoking marijuana. Some of them I played music with. Some of them I still hang out with today.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, my mom would always rail on me for peer pressure. And that stuck. Because I said to myself, if I'm going to try marijuana, it's not going to be around my friends here that I hang out with. They're not going to peer pressure me.
Right.
I'm not going to give them that power over me. So I decided there was a girl that I worked with at the grocery store.
And you were going to give her that power over.
The same grocery store I was working with that my dad busted me for cigarettes.
This grocery store is a bad influence.
I know,
Jeremy.
But I gave this girl that power actually. But she was outside. She went to another school, so the other cats didn't know about it until I told them. Yeah, I tried.
Yeah. So then you came back and you were all cool and it's like,
I showed up with sunglasses and the dreadlocks. And y'all don't know what you're smoking. But from that point and throughout high school and throughout a good bit of college, and even occasionally today, I would smoke marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's see here. What did it do for my music? What were the pros and cons? There's 2 types of marijuana. There's 2, I guess, strains. One is an indica, which is kind of more a relaxing, sedative, pain-killing kind of. Right. And then there's the sativa, which give you more energy. You're going to get up and clean the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that. After that encounter with this girl that I worked with, finally I started smoking with some of my other friends, and that's the first time I heard Pink Floyd Breathe.
Right.
Was after smoking a bit of marijuana, and that got me into Pink Floyd. Okay? And I don't know if I heard it without being stoned, it would have had the same effect. But since then, I listened to a lot of Pink Floyd and the Beatles smoking marijuana and got a big kick out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it definitely made listening to music a more vivid experience. But I'm not sure what it did for my creativity. I think it was just a social thing that we did. When we got together for band practice, we would all sit around and smoke, you know.
Yeah.
And then we'd play music and be in a good mood together.
Right, yeah.
And maybe that helped our synergy a little bit, or our group dynamic a little bit.
Maybe.
The peace pipe
Right,
kind of effect.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a social thing.
It was more of a social thing.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the cons of it. Obviously, you know, you're smoking. You're smoking, having it in your lungs and all that.
Right.
It is a motivation killer.
Man, yeah.
You might have a full day of yard work planned. You're going to go to the grocery store. You're going to go to Home Depot. You're going to fix that cabinet.
Not now.
And then you might sit down and smoke a bowl, and then that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, knowing what I know now in college, I certainly wouldn't have been going to class high.
Yeah.
I went to my philosophy class high because we were philosophizing, man. Nope, got a D.
I wonder if there's any correlation there.
Possibly. Or I just sucked at philosophy, which is also quite.
Which is also, well, you know, if that's true, then it didn't help that you were coming to class.
It did not help at all. Did not help at all. And again, like I say, when your brain is still developing in your early 20s, like high school, early college, and all that stuff,
right,
is the worst time to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I might have missed an opportunity or two. I might could be the president right now. I don't know. But I don't think it's really gotten in the way of a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
Certainly not Bob Marley. It was just part of their religion, you know. It was part of their, you know, one of the things they did.
Yeah.
Rituals.
Man. Fascinating stuff.
And you have anything else? You got any good stories on that?
Not really. I mean, I've tried marijuana a couple of times. I don't have any good, really. I mean, I knew people that were seriously into it.
Well, people don't generally do very crazy things. They might be kind of goofy and laugh and forget some stuff.
Yeah.
Where are my keys? Damn.
Right, yeah.
But
5 seconds later, where are my keys?
Walk back into the same room. Why am I in here?
Yeah.
But you can still spell cat. You can still spell dog. It doesn't make you stupid or just.
What if C-A-T really spelled dog?
Yeah. What was that from?
Revenge of the Nerds 2.
Yes.
And I can't believe that information is taking up space in my brain.
That's amazing.
But there you have it.
I remember that. Was it Ogre?
Ogre,
yeah, Ogre. But, yeah, well, I think that it's the most extreme case I had was one time when I was at a band practice and we had something new, something very green. I think it was called Northern Lights or something back then, which we didn't get a lot of. And I thought I was having an anxiety. I thought I was dying.
Oh.
I thought this was my first anxiety attack. I thought my heart was going to explode. I had to go lay down on the couch in the next room. It was just a really strong sativa.
Yeah.
And it gets your paranoia up and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that was one of the more extreme situations. There's not like a lot of people don't go jumping out of windows and...
Not really, but like you said, it is a huge motivation killer. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, the people who do it too much... Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't go jumping out of windows and have never heard of anyone ODing on marijuana or anything, but they definitely kills your motivation, and your motivation gets killed too much, and, you know, you're dropping out of school, you know, you're losing your job, you're getting fired from your band. This is something I know to have had happened. You know, if you can't make it to practice or make it to the gig on time because you're smoking too much weed, then your bandmates are going to have little use for you eventually.
Yeah.
You know?
More people get fired from bands for that kind of stuff. Not weed specifically, but problems like that.
Problems like that are the number one reason people get let go from musical groups. Or at least they used to be.
Kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of extremely unfair because musicians create an environment where a lot of these things are around and are accepted, and then punish you if you do them too much.
Right.
But, you know, there you go.
Well, let's talk about some casualties regarding people who have actually died from consumption of marijuana, like a direct overdose with no other mixing of substances. There's really none to speak of, actually.
casualty, maybe none that we know of who died, but how many would-be great musicians never really learned to play or
really never realized their full potential.
Right, yeah. I mean, how many uncounted thousands just never did what they could have done because they smoked too much weed.
Right. Yeah. Now, there's, of course, people have gotten into operating motor vehicles not unlike under the influence of alcohol.
Yeah.
And maybe weren't paying attention and drove into a train or whatever.
Yeah.
There's people get into car crashes, and that has happened under the influence of marijuana, usually mixed with alcohol.
Yeah.
But in terms of long-term effects, I would say that probably the same concerns as smoking minus the nicotine and then some of those other carcinogens and chemicals that are in the cigarettes. But no, seriously, I think I have a friend who's an EMT, and he has some EMT buddies in Denver. And he said, I was asking him if he's ever heard of any marijuana-related deaths. And he said that the most extreme kind of situation that he heard of was one of his medic friends out in Denver. They got a call from some young people, I guess college kids, that had taken some edibles, and they ate way, way more than the suggested, portion.
Right.
And when the fire people got there, the EMTs got there, they were like, "Who are you? What do you do? What are you doing here? What?" They were kind of just barely kind of just laying down, just kind of out of it. They didn't know why they were there, even though they are the ones that called them. "I don't feel good, man." They came over, and then they didn't even remember calling him. But
wow,
that was about as extreme as that got.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as musicians, it's kind of well known that Pink Floyd and the Beatles experimented with that. I put them together. I don't know why.
Yeah.
British 60s rock. Did you know which Beatle was the first one to smoke marijuana, Matt?
Well, if I were to guess John Lennon, that would be too obvious.
Yes, that was my guess.
Paul?
Nope. Ringo. That would have been the last one I expected, actually.
I kind of feel like I should have known that.
Bob Dylan actually introduced the Beatles to he offered them a marijuana cigarette. And
that's hilarious.
Ringo was the first one to try it.
That's hilarious.
Also, John and Yoko actually almost lost their American citizenship being arrested for marijuana. I can't imagine how much they must have had.
There's no telling.
Among the British pop artists, Donovan was the first wider-known artist to get busted for marijuana possession. And then you got your countless rap and hip-hop artists, like we mentioned, Snoop Dogg.
Yep.
Reggae, Bob Marley. Oh, Cypress Hill.
Right.
That whole album was about smoking.
Right.
Various and creative ways to smoke marijuana and how often to do it. Louis Armstrong, old Satchmo. Just way too
many. The list
to,
goes on.
To mention. But I don't know, man. I think that I would certainly consider that, also considering that the plant has more medicinal values also, and can probably take care of a lot of the problems that some of these high-priced pharmaceuticals that are being made in laboratories with all these weird chemicals.
Yeah.
There's reasons to consider marijuana if you're looking for some kind of if you're looking to try some kind of a mind-altering substance.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be like pro one way or the other here.
Well, yeah.
But yeah. It is certainly among the milder of the mind-altering substances. All right, now, finally, we were talking a little bit about marijuana and the psychedelic movement somewhat. Some of these artists that we're getting into that. And many of them also, at the time, were experimenting with psychedelics.
Right.
LSD, also known as acid.
Right.
Mushrooms, microdots.
Those kind of things, yeah.
A truly mind-altering substance.
Right.
When I think mind-altering, I think this is a truly mind-altering.
This causes hallucinations and things like that.
Yeah.
It's an abbreviation for lysergic acid diethylamide. Diethylamide.
Nice.
Thanks. Also called lysergide, potent synthetic hallucinogenic drug that can be derived from the ergo alkaloids, the grain deformity and toxic infectant of flour caused by the fungus Claviceps purpurea.
Good job, Matt. I'm sorry.
Wow.
This is right out of Encyclopedia Britannica.
LSD is usually prepared by chemical synthesis in a laboratory. Its basic chemical structure is similar to that of the ergot alkaloids, and it is structurally related to several other drugs, bufotenine, psilocybin, harmine, and ibogaine, which can all block the action of serotonin, the transmitter of nerve impulses in the brain tissue. LSD was used experimentally in medicine as a psychotometric agent to induce mental states that were believed to resemble those of actual psychotic diseases, primarily schizophrenia. After administration, LSD can be absorbed readily from any mucosal surface, even the ear.
Which is weird.
Yeah, and acts within 30 to 60 minutes. Its effects usually last for 8 to 10 hours.
Oh my God.
And occasionally some effects persist for several days.
Too much.
Yeah.
long.
Two serious side effects are prolongation and transient reappearance of the psychotic reaction.
Yeah.
If that's a reason not to, if that's not a reason to not do something.
Right. Right. It seems like this, of the drugs we have discussed and the substances we have discussed in this episode, and this will probably be the last one, given the time frame we're on here. This is certainly one of the more, one of the least predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experimented with LSD?
I haven't.
I did one time in college, back at a friend's house, and again, this is our practice pad.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until like when I started coming down off of the trip that I started to realize what I had done. I was like, oh wait, I took acid. So for a while, I didn't even know what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was around people who I knew and loved, and that was the plan. You gotta,
Yeah.
And yes, it did. There was some strange little realizations and and I don't know if it's like you're opening up your mind to a whole level of vibrations or perceptions or all that stuff. I don't know about all that stuff.
Right.
But it did change my perception a bit on things, Fortunately, I'm not among those who required it or did it a whole lot. That was really the one experience that I needed.
Yeah.
It lasted a good 12 hours, like you were saying. And I cannot devote that kind of time or would not want to.
Right, yeah.
To this kind of drug again. But it was certainly an experience. And then you hear stories about, you could take acid just one time and then be a vegetable for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's not entirely the case.
Okay.
But what you were talking about when you're reading the description, these what are known as kind of flashbacks, that has occurred.
Yeah.
To people who have only taken acid once or twice. So you might see tracers.
Oh, man.
At random, or you might have kind of schizophrenic or psychosis kind of episodes.
Yeah, not good.
So who wants to sign up for that?
Yeah,
I don't know
really.
if it's worth it to connect with some other space creature or whatever's going on
Exactly.
when you're doing that. That was all there was to it. I just wanted to kind of share that and be up front. And I think that the pros, if I was to say there was a pro and con to it, would be the strange experience, like the creatives that we want to go out and try and find new experiences to write about, to inspire. That was certainly the most out of this world I'd ever been. And the cons, obviously, it's just messing with your brain.
Yeah.
The LSD, it doesn't stay in your bloodstream, but it does stick to your the receptors for your serotonin.
Yeah.
Serotonin receptors.
Yeah.
And it can stay in there for a long term. It's a very messed up kind of thing to do. And to talk about how it's messed up some of our musician friends, well, I think one of the most common example is Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd's original lead guitarist, lead singer.
Right, yeah.
And that became a huge problem. They were playing London in the underground a whole lot, and he would just kind of sit there up on stage staring blankly away while playing the same note over and over again, maybe not even the right note, over and over again.
Yeah.
And then he would just do crazy things that would freak everybody out,
Yeah.
And there was a time or two where I think they were on their way to a show, and David Gilmour had joined the band by now.
Yeah.
They're like, should we pick up Syd? Nah, maybe let's just go ahead and try and do it without him. And that began his exit from the band.
Right, yeah.
And then he showed up. I call him an acid casualty. He didn't die. None of these people actually died of acid.
Yeah.
But when I say casualty, like we were talking about earlier, people who have been it really messed up.
Right,
you know? And so when they were recording Wish You Were Here, Syd Barrett showed up out of nowhere in the recording studio. And he'd gained a lot of weight and they're all happy to see him, but he was still just kind of gone.
Wow.
And that inspired them to write the song "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" about him.
Yeah, wow.
Kind of mourning the loss of a friend who was still alive.
Yeah, crazy.
Another interesting example was Peter Green, along with some of the other members of Fleetwood Mac. He was the original guitarist of Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
And they were introduced to one of the more potent forms of LSD at the time by chemist Augustus Owsley Stanley. This is back in 1969. Not long after that, he started to do it more and more, and then they were on a tour in Germany, and he fell in with some hippie crew in Germany and was gone for a long time. The band tried to go and get him away from these cats, and he just decided to stick around. Later on, he reemerges with robes and a crucifix, having given away all of his equipment, money, and possessions, and basically just kind of gone off the deep end.
Wow.
Now, he's alive and still performing today. He's not the acid... But he needs help off and on the stage.
Oh, wow.
And he's just kind of a bit of a mess, you know? And then there's a little bit more of an extreme incident here, which I think almost likens to the classic example of someone jumping out the window.
Yeah.
So Skip Spence was the drummer for Jefferson Airplane for their debut album.
Right.
And it wasn't very long that he was no longer in Jefferson Airplane. It didn't say whether that was about acid or what. But the band he joined right after that was a band called Moby Grape. And one night he took a hotel axe to the door of Don Stevenson, Moby Grape's drum player.
Oh, man.
Because he thought that Stevenson was the Antichrist and he was really going to kill him.
Oh, wow.
This man was going to kill his bandmate.
Oh.
Because in his head, he thought he was the Antichrist.
Oh, not good.
So...
Maybe to stay away from this one.
I don't think I want to be in that kind of situation. And I don't think I want to be in a band
with a person within that kind of situation. Yeah, maybe not.
Bring an axe to my hotel room. Because I don't know how I would fight back against an axe.
No.
So, as far as survivors go, I mean, yeah, it's not one of those drugs that are known to have all these long-term health effects. It's really more of a mental condition.
Yeah.
And I've known a lot of people actually who took a lot of acid.
Yep.
And yeah, no, they're not the same as they were before that.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? To this day.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'm going to say real quick is sometimes when people hear bands that they know have taken acid, there's like a certain kind of psychedelic kind of thing going on. Maybe the music is crazy, maybe it's disjunct, maybe it's going to sound good to somebody on acid. You know what I mean?
Right.
But for the longest time, I could have sworn Frank Zappa was just on all kinds of crazy drugs. There was this amazing animation masterpiece by an artist, Bruce Bickford, called The Amazing Mr. Bickford.
Yeah.
And it was just this whole big claymation scape. It's one of the most amazing claymation feats at the time that I had ever seen. And it was just some of those messed up, psychedelic, weird stuff. Animals coming out of the ground, eating each other and coming back out. And civilizations fighting against each other and shooting each other. It's crazy stuff. And the music was just so strange. Frank Zappa did the music to it.
Yeah.
He even had a cameo or two as a claymation guy in there, Frank Zappa. And it turns out Zappa never did any drugs. He was straight edge.
Yeah, I was going to say he's kind of famously drug-free.
Yeah. But the music he wrote, you would swear that there must have been some kind of... So I'm saying that maybe we underestimate our own creative abilities that come from within. Yeah. Maybe some of us feel like we need to unlock it with some kind of key. But it's there.
It's just there. You just have to start listening to it. And all of these substances, in my personal experience at least, can easily do as much to keep you from expressing that as they can to help you along. You may think you're opening up to all sorts of new things, but that's a little bit of an illusion.
And perhaps you're discrediting yourself a little bit. Your own creativity,
absolutely,
your own art.
Yeah, what you can do without the help of any foreign substance.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that anyone really needs to do something like this to unlock certain things. But then, I mean, there's classic cases of like poets like one of my favorites, Coleridge, who did a lot of laudanum, which was opium dissolved in alcohol.
Sure.
And came up with some of the most vivid imagery and crazy stories Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner comes to mind, of course.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't even talk about classical composers that did all these things, but let's face it, you probably have more intel on that. Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, I mean... They're kind of opium. I'm sure there was opium or booze or something crazy.
To some of them. I mean, they all have their own different stories and things, but, you know... it is honestly not so different, you know. They could at times affect their lives very negatively. You know.
Oh yeah.
So
anyway, as a recap, I guess we could just
don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
Yeah,
Stay off drugs. Choose your drugs.
Which is where we started. We started with don't do drugs.
Yes.
And we end with don't do drugs.
Yeah. Really, I mean, you have so much potential that can be stifled and slowed down by that.
Yeah.
And like we said in the first episode, there may be times where we can be a cautionary tale.
Yes.
And I think we've done a pretty good job of sharing that.
I think we have.
I hope it doesn't change anyone's perception of us. Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. I don't know. But I did want to be honest about it. And I did want to share some of my experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe to save you guys the... trouble of trying it yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all of those things, there's the things we mentioned had potential to overtake my life, and I had to work hard at times in my life to not let these things overtake my life. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's worth noting that all these things, if you do want to try them or mess with them, moderation, get the experience, take note of it, see what it did for you. But don't rely on it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to start talking about music again next time.
Yes. But we will have a part 2 to this episode at some point because we have yet to talk about cocaine, heroin, the big no-no, opium, all that stuff, ecstasy from the rave scene.
Man.
So there we go. We will talk to you guys again soon, and keep on listening.
See you soon.
Thanks again for listening to another of our Special Topics episodes. We really would appreciate your feedback and opinions on the subject matter and its relevance to our show. Most importantly, we hope you found it informative and helpful. For questions or comments, you may reach us at info@musicstudent101.com.